this meeting to order. This is the special city council budget work session for Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilman Bendis.
Here.
Councilman Carter.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Davey.
Here.
Mayor Gillis.
Here.
Councilwoman Harris.
Here.
Councilwoman Meldrum.
Here.
Councilman Scarback.
Here.
Quorum present.
Can we have a moment of silent prayer? Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would anybody like to speak for public comment? All right, moving on. Our new business. There's only one member of the public here, so I figured. Moving on to new business, we have a presentation of proposed water and sewer rates by Waterworth and Josh Stewart, who is our water plant superintendent. Mr. Stewart?
Good evening, council. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I know it's not a fun topic to talk about rates. However, there's a lot that goes into these rates. And so what I'm gonna try to do today is kind of explain what goes into rates, what we use to calculate the rates, and what determines how much we charge per 1,000 gallons of water and sewer. In years past, when we were working on our budgets and everything like that, we never really took into account our infrastructure, how much we have in the ground. So I think it's important that we understand how much we have in assets, because even though Algonac is a small community, there's a large amount of infrastructure that runs it. So a lot of this data that I'm gonna go over came from engineer reports. I did not come up with this data. I've gone through prints after prints at our DPW, and I've pulled every report that we've done recently for anything to do with sewer and water. So with that said, I'll talk about our assets here. So Algonac, like I said, even though it's small, has a lot of feet of water main and sewer. We have over 33,000 feet of water main and 116,000 feet of sewer. Obviously we have the water treatment plant, and we're co-owners on the wastewater treatment plant. These are expensive facilities. They require updates, they require maintenance, they require a lot of upkeep and funds in order to keep those running properly to ensure that we have the water and sewer that we have today. The asset value that we have is about $95 million. So each foot of water main nowadays, when you go to replace it, is around $600 per foot. That's a big cost. So when you have a water main break, you're looking at funding that right then and there. And the goal with this rate structure is that we have that money on hand, and that we can perform these updates before we have the pipes break. Going into how I got that data, as some of you are aware, we did the SAW grant. We were actually one of the last to receive it. We were the 681st to receive that grant out of 688. So we were at the tail end of what kind of started all this for a lot of other communities. We're just going through all that data, and obviously we're doing work on the sewers now to try to improve our sanitary flows and cut down on all the excess. So the SAW grant, for those that don't know, when it was put in place, the main goal of the SAW grant from Eagles End was to help communities start preparing their rates. And that was, determine how much you have in assets, determine what your condition is, determine how long is this stuff about to last for, because they realized that a lot of these communities put their sewer in around the same time. And now we're getting to an age to where those sewer pipes that we put in, they're not gonna fail tomorrow, we don't know. But they're to the age of what they expect for a life. So part of the SAW grant was to help plan and prepare for when that happens, that you have funds on hand to replace those. So when we did the SAW grant, that was a whole year's worth of work. Obviously still continuing through to this day. The SAW grant, what we found was that 20% of our system was in fair or poor condition. You know, during the SAW grant, they cameraed every single foot of main that they could. Granted, it was during the high water, so about 78% of it is what we could do. We couldn't do all of it. You know, we had about 11 pipes that were deemed to be, probability of failure is pretty high. So they scaled it on a 1 to 5. They came back as a 5, they're probable to fail. Siphons, basically siphons are something that takes the flow off the islands. Instead of using a lift station, they take the flow off the island and bring it inland for us to get it to the wastewater plant. When they did those, they found that they were halfway working. That's a big thing. If you have an island backup, it's a big problem. You're talking the whole island, whether it be Point Tremble down here, you know, anybody that would be on that island could have a decent failure, you know, talking sewer backups in their house. Each one of those siphons is $500,000, and that's just to do the bare minimum repair on it. So when I went through all these rates, the goal was that we plan for this stuff so that we can make the corrections that we have to do and plan for the future. As a lot of you also know, we're dealing with a large amount of infill, which is, you know, excess water that's not just sewer water. Either way, that ends up at the wastewater plant, and we get charged for it. Now, the homeowner may not get charged for that, but we get charged for that. That's a big factoration into these rates. So, as some of you may know, Algonac system was put in mostly in the late 60s. You know, before then it was just disposed of. And then that's when they said, hey, you need an infrastructure. So, in talking about trying to do improvements, the sewer projects that we have planned, which came from the SAW grant based on what we found. Sorry, my cursor disappeared. This is the findings that we found in our SAW grant, and this is the recommendation from HRC that we do in order to continue our maintenance and limit the I&I or infill. They recommend that we spend, as you can see here, we have different districts of sanitary, and they recommend that we spend roughly around $300,000 a year in improvements. There is also additional recommendations for as far as the manholes themselves, that you reline those, so it's around $82,000 a year. And again, this stuff requires the funds to be on hand. So that concludes sewer, just as a history of the sewer. To talk about the water. So in water, we did something similar to the SAW grant. We did a reliability study. It's the same concept. We check for flows, we check the types of mains, we check what type of pipe we have, and we determine how reliable our system is. What's the probability that this water main will fail on any given street inside of Algonac. In doing that review, it was better than the sewer, but at the end of the day, it still consists of an outdated infrastructure. Majority of our system is determined to be undersized, which causes issue with flows, it causes issue with fire protection, and the big thing is the type of pipe. So majority of our system is still considered AC pipe. It's asbestos wrapped cement. This pipe, about 50 years worth of life is what you get out of it. I'm not saying that in 50 years everything's gonna go down, but there's a high probability of failure when you get to that point. And we're approaching that time now. So this is actually from our reliability study. As you can see, I mentioned earlier, we have 133,000 feet of pipe, water main, just in water main. Of that, a majority, like I said, is AC pipe, around, I think it was close to 50,000 feet of that, so almost 50% of it. For terms of water, we try to do with anything that's 8-inch now, anything new going in is 8-inch or higher. So of that, the 65,000 feet is below that. Cement pipe, the AC pipe that I'm talking about, they account for 13% of all water main breaks, and it's the second largest pipe right now in failure. So, in terms of trying to correct this, obviously you cannot replace this much pipe in a short amount of time. You have to do it over an amount of period, you know, doing small gradual improvements each year would be the correct approach. So this is also from our reliability study. This is from HRC. These are their recommendations for what we should do based on priority. Obviously the priority would be updating the old undersized mains and correcting them to a new PVC main. Just one of these mains to replace is a high dollar amount. You know, like I said, with $600 per foot, it adds up quick when you gotta replace one road worth. And there's a lot to replace. So what actually went into determining our water and sewer rates, we reviewed our budget. It's a big part of it, right? We don't wanna raise rates just based upon our budget. This isn't our cost increasing, these are costs increasing to us. The last time we raised water rates, 2011, you have a lot of inflation to catch up on. Just the inflation alone is around 40% for catching up with inflation. We reviewed the budget, our capital plan for what we plan to replace the next 5 years. We review, like I said, all of our assets, the current condition, can we let this go? Can we wait? We've reviewed all of that. We reviewed how many gallons our system uses, how many users, what our average bill is. We calculated everything into what we could to determine the best way to do this, because at the end of the day, we know this is not an easy task. So, in talking about the water rates, 62% of our customers use 6,000 gallons or less in 2 months. And 76 use 8,000 gallons or less. That is not a high consumption rate when you're talking about water usage. Obviously our current capital charge is $2 per 1,000 gallons, and our water usage is $2.25 per 1,000 gallons. The current bi-monthly average bill with this majority of our residents is around $76 per bi-monthly.
Is that for all 3 townships, or both townships in the city, or just?
This is just for Algonac.
Okay.
So, like I said, majority of Algonac is residential. We only have about 1% commercial, which when you're talking about rates, it makes it difficult to make rates particular to just residential, not commercial. Generally in rate structure, you wanna front load your commercial customers to pay the majority to keep the onus off the homeowners. So on the proposed new water rates, we are looking to change our fees. So on the previous fees, we had 4 different classes. We charge per unit, we charge a capital per 1,000, we charge a usage per 1,000, and then we charge the maintenance fee on the meter. When you look at that bill, a lot of people don't understand where's this money going. So what we did is we split it, and we have only 2 charges now. We have a capital charge, which is going towards your infrastructure, it's going to improvements, it's going to regular maintenance and the regular needs of what your system needs. And then the per 1,000, which is mostly going for plant operations, you know, what it takes for us to actually treat that water, chemical costs, anything to do with our equipment at the plant. So with this new fee structure, the average bill will go to $136.
Compared to
That is-
$76.
So 80% increase.
Yes. I know it's a,
So that's a $240 tax onto the citizens
well,
per year, additional that they have to pay into.
it is a increase, and like I said, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that number. You know, I spent months calculating all these numbers, going through the budget, seeing where we could cut. Can we move capital projects out 5 years? But none of that was possible. Basically, to put it in layman's terms, where your accounts stand right now, if we do not increase rates, there is no funds. So, and I'm not talking funds for replacing a main, I'm talking just to replace a pump. So, in terms of water, yes, this looks like a large increase.
So on average, what are we, 240,000 short for the fund, for the city?
You, in terms of your budget,
Yeah, for you guys.
in terms of the budget, we can meet the budget, but we would not be doing any improvements.
No,
That
I'm
means-
saying with the new rate, so that will give another, so that's $240 per household per year on average. We have around 1,000 homes, so what, you're asking for 240 a year? Technically,
Roughly.
give it a shot, yeah.
Roughly. You know, and it's important to know that when we did the rates, we didn't plan to start doing these improvements this year. If we were to look at trying to do improvements this year, the rates would have gone way higher than this. The goal here is to slowly ramp up to that part to where we can start establishing those funds. It's not gonna be now, it'll be 5 years from now, we start establishing funds to have this stuff on hand. And again, try doing a capital project each year to replace the water mains.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
And if you want, I can wait till the end.
No,
How do we compare to other cities,
no,
other rates?
that's also in here.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay.
I don't wanna interrupt you.
Hang on. Anyone else?
I'll wait too.
So, that's the water side. Now on the sewer side, this is our current rates for our sewer. As you can see, we have capital charges, we have a sewer flat fee, we have the per thousand, and the per unit. So, all these fees kind of go conjunction, and we did the same exact thing. Instead of splitting it into 3 different things, you're getting charged just the capital and the per usage fee. So the proposed rates for the new ones. Okay. Sorry. So the average bill again on the sewer, sorry, I didn't touch on this. The average bill is around $65 bi-monthly as well on the sewer. Again, that's accounting for most of our residents around 6,000 gallons. On the proposed rates, we have a capital charge and then a per 1,000 gallon charge. The new monthly bill average will be around 125. In terms of sewer, again, this is a large increase, I know that. I
Is
know
that
that
on
we need
top
to-
of the 136 plus, 136 plus?
Yeah, so the 136 would be water and the 125 would be sewer. Now, it's important to know, especially in sewer, I know this is a large amount. I've crunched numbers every which way that you could. In terms of sewer, you guys are looking at ending this year with $20,000 in your account. That doesn't do, like I said, anything. You know, without raising the rates periodically, you look at doing these large increases. That's part of it. It's very important that you do just gradual increases so you don't get to this circumstance right here. You know, in terms of sewer, as you know, we're co-owners of that sewer authority. And Algonac's flow is about 50% of it. That's a large amount of flow. and you guys are paying for it. Like I said, you're not billing for it, but you're paying for it. So there has to be some way to collect that revenue. The new bill, like I said, is $125. So, the recommended rates for the average homeowner, like I said, average 6,000 gallons, that's about the majority of our customers. They can expect a monthly bill from 38 to go to 68. I know it sounds like a big increase. The monthly sewer, 32.50 to 62.50. And obviously, you know, how that compares. In order to get the water to your house, in order to get the sewer away from your house, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into that. And it sounds like a lot of money, $68 per month, but how many people have a cell phone bill that's 75 or so? It's a lot of infrastructure that needs updates, needs upkeep, and needs maintenance. As you asked before, Mr. Membis, this is our comparison to the other communities. When we talk about this here, so our current rate at $2.25, we are the lowest water rate out of all the communities. And this isn't just neighboring communities, this isn't St. Clair, this is out of everybody. And this has been this way for years. So our new proposed rate is $3. As you can see, it still puts us in line for being the lowest. And when we look at the capital charge, it is higher. The way that the water consumption rates work, you don't know how much water exactly is going to be used in a year. People use less, people use more. By upfronting on the capital charge, you're guaranteed to have that revenue, so you don't have that loss.
So, please explain the differences between the two columns.
So, in a capital charge, that is a set amount, no matter what, that gets billed either quarterly or bi-monthly. In the usage, that is literally just how much water you use. If you use 6,000 gallons, you'll be billed at $3 per gallon for that 6,000. It's the same on the old water bills, we used to bill per thousand as well on the capital. As I said before, when you start doing that, you kind of run into a risk of not collecting the revenue that you need to do the basic operations. So by having in your capital charge and figuring out exactly how much goes into your infrastructure, how much goes into your staffing, your operations, and your maintenance, you're guaranteed to get that revenue. I should also note that we're not the only community going through this. There's a lot of communities going through this stuff, looking to bond, looking to increase rates, because they are dealing with the failing infrastructure.
When you're done, I wanna touch on that whole thing.
Absolutely. Do you wanna touch on it now, or you want me to?
Yeah, and, you know, I've brought this up, a few times before. When we're looking at the comparisons, and it's here, Marine City increased $16 for 2025, 2026. And especially Cotterville. Now I know that, one of the reasons that Cotterville had an increase is because they're paid on their state revolving fund loan, and some of that increase goes into the payments on that loan, correct?
Correct. And in terms of Cotterville specifically, obviously they are supplied with water.
Right.
Through Marine City. Marine City just recently increased their rates on both water and sewer, so I'd expect
And they're
them to pay
doing-
more as well.
And they're doing a lot of work in Marine City right now. I know that they got a
Correct.
grant, and I'm not sure how much of it was a loan. I don't think that they did a revolving fund loan for any of it. I know they got a decent amount of grant, and some of it was a loan. I know Carterville was able to, when they did their, revolving loan, that they were able to get, you know, pretty good knockdown on the percentage or whatever, what they were gonna have to pay. And this goes back to what I've said a few times, where if we are looking at this type of increase, it's gonna be difficult. Say we get you, I would much rather, I would feel more comfortable asking for this kind of increase if we were going to, if we had to pay on a loan or on a bond and get this all done at one time. Then I could understand this type of increase. And that's what gets me, is because, you know what the results of the stock grant was. I mean, and I had said to HRC when they were here, yeah, we can do year by year. And we're looking at an increase, correct, on what we're gonna pay in capital improvement projects up above that 200-ish that we were doing before. But, especially looking at the results of the SAW grant, this kind of, because, okay, say we get to a point where, you know, we've got a better shot than 2 years ago of getting the state revolving fund loan, okay, and our chances are better. We can't increase rates again
No.
to pay for, to make
No.
the payments on that loan.
So the,
And that's what we need, and from where I'm looking at, to be able to do what we need to do.
Can you, sorry to
no,
interrupt,
go ahead.
so we approve this, you get your money, what's the plan?
The plan is, like I said, we'll continue our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years that we set.
Do you have set on this sewer, that sewer, that sewer, and that line?
Correct, so the way that the sewer works, as I was explaining, for any type of infill that we're getting, which is a large problem that we have in Algonac, we're getting billed for that. So the first problem that we're addressing is that infill. Any improvement that we do is gonna lower that amount, and it's gonna save you a lot of money.
But do you have an exact plan on what streets?
We do, yes, so that was outlined, that's what we've been doing for the past 3 years now.
Right.
We're
I
lining
don't
the high
remember.
priority sections in the districts. So the plan for this coming year, coming up, is not only to do the lining, but what we do is called smoke testing.
Right.
Smoke testing, you spend a large amount of smoke through the sewer system, and you're looking for illicit connections. Those are your biggest contributors to infill. That's the priority. What we find in that is gonna determine what we're gonna do the next year. Which areas are the worst?
Okay, so we don't have an exact, what street are we gonna fix in 2026?
We do have the exact streets for which ones we're gonna be lining based on the sewer, so that's gonna continue. To tell you off the top of my head, those exact streets, I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, we can get that to you. But it's generally scattered throughout the city, like I said, based upon the worst districts.
So then, let me ask you this, and you might not be able to answer it now. If we do this, where we are just doing this yearly by the number that we have in capital improvement,
Mhm.
how long do you think that's gonna take? I mean, instead of working on
It's,
bonding it out,
it's gonna
Or
be a
getting along.
continued process. It's
it's
gonna
gonna
take
be a
time.
while.
Like
Right.
10+ years or under 10?
In the structure of the rates, your goal is to do something every year, no matter what.
I think one mistake that the city made over the years, and I don't know if mistake's the right word, saying it's all fixed, we're gonna stop. It needs to always be a thing of every year for eternity. something's
Right,
being
and this was thrown in
replaced,
our laps.
So that we don't get in a thing of way before Jacob was even thought about being born. cause I mean, my God, I'm 6 years old in 1968, when most of these pipes were put in, but you always want it to be like in 21, 25, we're putting in 3 more pipes.
Yes.
So that it's not a big expense all at once, and we avoid having to have this big of an increase in the future.
And that was the
I
big
think that's
problem
what
with
you're
the
trying to
saw.
say.
Well, yeah,
So
this is,
in
and
the
this is
saw
why we're here right now, is because
'Cause-
nothing had been
Right.
done.
Exactly.
Right, so
I-
it's a better process to do 2, 3, 4, whatever number of pipes a year, rather than do it all at once. It's done, it gets forgotten about, and then 50 years from now,
Whoa.
when, you know, Jacob's my age, then we're in the same position.
And I understand that, but
Do we have a plan B is there any plan B, or is this the only plan?
Plan B, like I said, we've ran every scenario. If you guys decide, that's what Waterworth, they're actually on Zoom right now. They're on Zoom right now. They're the company that helped me establish these rates, run every different type of scenario that we could think of. And they could do that with you guys. When I was trying to figure out a different approach, can we do less money? Can we only do 5%? No matter how we did this, you had no money. It just plummets. Because over the past few years, you know, like Bendis was touching on, when they put that system in the 60s, nobody thought about, hey, this is ever gonna go back. You know, if we gradually put some money aside when we first put it in, we wouldn't be in this scenario. Or do standard little increases here and there. It doesn't look like this.
I totally agree, I just think the citizens are gonna be absolutely pissed when we raise rates
And-
$560 per year.
Well,
I can't get
Because you know,
past,
all our phones are gonna go off for 15 days straight.
And I'm with you in the same.
I tried that too.
I can't get past,
Let's, you still have one more slide to
This,
present?
yeah, the sewer.
I just don't, before, I know we have a lot to discuss, so I wanted to let him
Yeah.
get through his, and then we can.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanna ask questions while I try working on this, I will answer your questions. It was just a comparison of our sewer rates. And I'd like to show that to you, but I'll answer questions while I work on it.
so far, well, we're looking at a percentage increase, and I think Jacob said it, and I'm too tired of math right now. How much of a percentage increase is
It's
this?
80%.
80%.
So it goes up to 5.
How does it work, of, 20% increases over 4 years, or 10% increases over 8 years, or even 10 years?
So when I was trying to run scenarios where we gradually increased it, the problem that we had is that ideally, we would have done this 5 years ago. You know, or before that. We've done some sort of gradual increase so that we have the money on hand, but the problem is right now, we have no money on hand. So basically, as your revenue's coming in from your water bills, it's going right out. And without an increase, you don't even have enough to cover the bills that are coming in.
okay, so then, given that, can we, cause, you know, I can't at, you know, just one. Can we get HRC back in here and start discussing, possible, you know, to try for, again, you know, cause we talked about this before, about having them look into a revolving fund.
The possibilities of getting a loan, that could be years away. You don't have enough money to do projects, one project a year. Like, you have to make a decision on your wage rate, on the rates. It isn't about bringing HRC back in here.
No.
They're not gonna be able to change any of this. They've already done the whole study. We know all the projects that we have upcoming for the next 20 years. It's a matter of how are we going to fund them, and nothing was done for many, many years. If you go back, Josh has looked at all of the plans, and there's years and years that no projects were done at all, nothing.
I think part of the problem too is, in the past, and again, not to point fingers, but we should have had the gradual rates every year since 1968, and not,
This is a big.
we haven't had any rate increase since 2011. I mean, I just know from the price of postage stamps, things go up, okay? The price of eggs, things go up. And I hate the word should, but maybe we should have been doing this all along, even when we had the money, and we kinda, when I say we, I'm looking in the mirror too.
Yeah.
We let it go because everything was looking good, and then all of a sudden we get hit with this, and we have to make some tough.
You count, the recent councils, we have increased rates, but not enough. And at the time, as you saw, we were one of the last people to get the SAW grant. They've all been raising their rates for years. We just got the information that we needed to know why we need to raise them to what they are. But if you look at the comparison screens, and I know we've all, the whole staff, we've all been in meetings with Josh and with Waterworks trying to talk to figure this out. If you look at the comparisons, it is a big one, but if you look at us in other communities, we're very, very low compared to other communities. We're the lowest.
Our citizens are still gonna have a call when they see their water bill went up 100 and what is it, a month?
It's 120 a quarter.
A month?
No, $60.
$60
$60 a month.
Right, 60 a month. so
$60 a month, so you're talking $2 a day.
But a couple of them, like I said, with Cotterville, and I know part of it in Marine City, and, they got some of it in grant. Have you guys looked at, or can you look at, maybe lowering this increase to, say, 50%? And what would that do?
Well, Josh, show them the sewer comparison on the big screen.
I think Wendy's
And then-
been trying to.
No,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fine, no, it's fine, no, I'm new, I'll jump in, I think we should just
Cause I
avoid
know I talk too much and.
the woulda,
Yeah.
shoulda, shoulda, we're here right now,
Right.
our infrastructure is bad. We're not gonna be liked by our residents, but this is something that's got to be done.
Oh,
Unfortunately, it's
definitely.
gonna be our board that's makes that decision, but it doesn't look good, I understand that, but. Again, we can't go back to 2011, what we should have done, we should have looked closer at it, we shouldn't have. I mean, this is all new
With
too.
$86, so I'm gonna have 120, so my water bill's gonna be $200.
It's gonna affect everybody the same way.
Are they there to run some of the comparisons?
This is the sewer comparisons. As you see. And again, as I touched on the water, this is not accounting for the people that are currently going through it. We are not the only ones that are going through this talk meeting. I would expect the majority of these places are gonna be raising their rates within the next 5 years, because we are all at the same age of infrastructure, and it's gonna be there.
Josh, doesn't this also include the wastewater treatment plant is going to need significant improvements?
Yeah, so, for those that don't know, the wastewater treatment plant needs upgrades, and we're talking roughly around $15 million. So, when we did these rates, we don't wanna, like kinda how you touched on, we don't wanna increase these rates and then come back again and say, hey, I need more money yet again. The goal with the structure is that it sets us for the future. As long as we can do this, we are set for the future. Now, again, that doesn't mean you don't do any rate increases, but you have to do just small increments each year to keep up with the inflation.
So is what you're saying that some of this is going to go towards improvements at the water plant, or at the wastewater treatment plant?
Correct, so
Some of it
There's
is,
gonna be a bond payment.
there's gonna be a bond payment that we're gonna have to pay, and this is in preparation for doing that, so
it
that way
is,
we're
okay,
not
alright,
increasing again.
But with that bond payment, it also involves the other two communities that we're in
Yeah,
agreement
or-
with, right? So they'll look at,
Go ahead, Wendy.
oh no, they'll look at the same kind of, expenses that we are.
Yeah.
So when you created, like was mentioned, this budget is, water sewer budget is new to us, right? I mean, have we ever had a water sewer budget before? I mean, or was it always in the city budget itself?
It was always in the budget.
It was always in the budget, but this is the first time we're separating out water and sewer to go through it detailed based on all of the information that we have gathered in the past 2 years.
Are we raising rates that what we sell to Clay Township?
In turn, yes, Clay Township will be seeing an increase.
A significant one?
the way that the agreement is with Clay Township, they pay a percent of what the percent is on the plant. Now, majority of this stuff has to do with Algonac's distribution. Clay Township is not responsible for our water mains, and we're not responsible for theirs.
Right.
So,
Now I have a question on that.
go
What
ahead.
about our water mains that deliver water to Clay Township?
That will be factored in, yes. So they do pay a portion of that. Again, it depends on their flows, but Clay Township will be seeing an increase as well.
Now, as far as the wastewater treatment plant goes, and, you know, what we're going additionally to pay for improvements at the plant, have we sat down with Clay and Ira at a meeting to discuss?
So the
This-
wastewater authority has a representative for each community. We do discuss it, we do discuss, you know, what the future holds, how we're gonna bond this. I think it's important to know that in terms of the wastewater plant, Algonac pays a percent of what they flow. Like I said, Algonac is 50%, so where you own 30% of that plant, you're paying 50% of its budget. That's a big number. If we can reduce that, it saves us hundreds of thousands.
I'm confused on that 50% number, because I've always thought that now that we leased that extra 5%, that we were within our,
So that leasing is in terms of capacity, we have a certain capacity amount, which is 30% of that plant. In terms of operation, you pay a percent of what that flow is. So last quarter, Algonac did 80 million, and then Clay and Ira combined only did about 40 million. So Algonac is paying the majority of those expenses. So of that budget of SMUA, that's a big thing, that when we were calculating the rates, when we looked at the operating expense of what we're paying to SMUA, it's a large amount. The increase roughly since the high water was around 200,000 that you're paying extra a year for this excess flow. So the plan, July 1st with that smoke testing, it will cost us around 228,000, but
For
the
smoke
goal,
testing?
the goal is that we smoke test and we can lower that flow going to the plant, and any percent that we lower saves us around 3,500 per percent.
And if I'm not mistaken, we're the only ones that haven't done a smoke test yet, correct? I think Ira and Clay had done smoke testing.
It kind of depends on the system.
Right.
Not every place does a smoke test, but yes, majority of the places have done smoke tests in the past. Back in the day when they first put the sanitary in, they sometimes tied it into storm.
Mhm.
If we could find one of those, that's like a golden egg.
Right.
So if we pass this as is, how long before you ask for another rate increase? How long could we go knowing that we won't need another one? I guess that's a better way to word it.
Well,
If you have it visited every year, there'll be a rate increase every year, am I correct?
correct, so even if we did these rates today, I still would recommend that you do, you know, somewhere around 3%, just to keep up with inflation. That way, if you don't, for the next 5 years, you're not looking at 15% again. It makes it way easier for you guys. You know, there is other communities, and I'll throw this out there, there is other communities that kind of have ordinances that allow for the superintendent to raise the rates. Obviously, you still would approve it, but it kind of takes the burden off of you guys. I know my phone's gonna ring off the hook, kind of like you said, I know it's gonna happen. I know there's gonna be a lot of upset people. I don't take pride in having to sit up here and do this, but for the community, for Algonac, this is honestly the best move for the future and going forward, that we start addressing it now before we're looking at a scenario that we can't do anything about.
I agree. It's just, it's scary, that percentage, it's scary. It's,
Yeah, I
that's,
agree.
you know, yeah, we need this, all this, but that scares me.
There's no way we can slowly do this over 5 years and raise it 20% for 5 years to get us to this number, and then raise it 3% moving forward, because if you present at $2 a day, we're at $730. So, around, give or take, so, no, it'd be more than that, but, so on average, we're raising rates around 700 plus per household in the city of Belgrade,
Per year.
per year.
Yeah.
They're going to
Maybe
lose-
with 80
They're not.
Yes, they are.
They will
There's
literally,
gonna be
you think
people-
this place has been packed before? They'll be out the door, in the road, they'll be protesting on this front lawn. We cannot do this, because there's people that can't even barely do it right now, let
Yes.
alone
But
raise this.
also think about it this way, it's looking like a big increase right now, but had we done this before,
Well, it's an 80 and a 50, that's massive.
Well, if we take our trusty calculators, and if we had done this since 2011, it would have been 5.71% a year increase if we had done it every year, which is not that far off of your 3% a year, estimate. I have very mixed feelings, but the thing is, what is the alternative? The alternative is we have a systematic, failure of the whole system, and then it costs us a heck of a lot more money than what it costs us now. I hate tax increases more than anybody. I think it can't be a yes or no, I think maybe council wants to do 50% for 2 years in a row, or something like that, I
You
don't
wanna run
know.
the scenarios?
I was gonna say, I do have Waterworth here, if you guys would like to try to run scenarios.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
They can run these numbers.
Recording in progress.
Hey Jacob, hey Naya. Trying to put you on the screen here. So we talked to council about the rates. They were interested in just running some scenarios. We only have about 15 minutes left. One scenario that they were looking at, as opposed to doing a great increase right at one shot, was if we could do a 20% increase over the next 5 years.
20 each year for 5 years?
Correct.
Correct. How do I get this to show on there?
I was just gonna pull up yeah. So did you wanna see that in wastewater or water, sorry, Josh?
Let's do it in wastewater, please.
Sure, okay. So this is the,
Sorry, hold on one second. How do I? It's on my screen, but it's not on that screen.
You just wanna turn the podium?
Turn full view on?
No, you wanna turn the podium,
Oh.
so we can just see it.
Yeah, we'll read it to us, whatever it takes.
We're gonna read it to us.
Try to bring it to you somehow. You see here?
Yeah.
Is that big enough?
Dollar amount.
Okay. Can you hear me, Naya? Okay. They're looking at my laptop because they can't figure it out.
What's it telling us?
did you show, like,
So, I'll briefly explain here. So what we have is this black line is your current cash position. This is how much cash Algonac has on hand. And these bars here are your revenues with capital improvements. So this is of the sewer account. Okay, this is 2026 right here. Like I said, 20,000 is what we're projected to end at. So is this showing the 20% increase on here, or is this just keeping it status quo?
Yeah, this is nothing. Let me just explain, I'll just walk through these really quickly. So, like Josh was saying, all of your expenses and revenues are here, but I'll just break them down for you to see. So we have your operating expenses, and we have the actuals from 23 and 24, and then the 2025 and 26 budgets. And then your current debt and proposed debt. I'll get into proposed debt in a second. And then capital expenses, and the capital expenses again are from your historic actuals, and then a capital improvement plan. And then in 2031, we started out March 4th, a reserve or replacement for your assets. I think Josh probably covered all of that if, just like what he was saying earlier. But basically this breaks down all of your expenses over the next 5 to 10 years, based on, 3% inflation, and then like I said, just increasing the amount that you're putting into capital or reserving for capital in the future. And then if I layer on your revenues, you have your revenues from your rates, and then other operating and non-operating revenues, some grants, and then a loan-ish that, I'm not sure if you covered this, Josh, this is borrowing from, this is like a proposed borrowing from the general fund to be able to pay for one of the projects in 2026. But as you can see, the expenses are much higher than the revenues, and that causes the cash to drop very quickly. We're in the beginning of fiscal year 2025, we had a cash balance of $379,000 in the wastewater fund, and by the end of 2025, that would be falling down just above zero, and then very quickly into 2026, you'd be out of cash. So, does that, like, is what you're looking at make sense?
That's if we do nothing.
Yeah, that's if you do. So
If
then
we
all-
wanna know if we increase it 10 or, what do we say,
20 for
20% for 5 years or 10% for 10 years.
Yeah, so this is 20% for 5 years. And you can see that the revenues, which are these orange bars that I was, talking about just a moment ago, you can see how those are increasing 20% a year.
Yeah.
But if I layer everything on, you can see how, they don't cover the costs of your operating or your capital until 2030. And then even in 2031, once we start allocating more money towards the capital reserves, we're at a deficit again.
So what if we do 20% for 6 years, so it'd be 120% increase over 6 years, what would happen? Because would that give us an extra 20% to cover it? So it'd be year 2032.
Yeah, so like my that looks good if you're looking out by 2032, your revenues are meeting your expenses. But the problem is right here in the next couple of years, and like the revenues that you change in the future obviously will go towards future expenses, but you have quite a deficit in 2026, 27, 28, so the revenues need to go up in the next couple of years rather than stretching them out that far.
So technically, if we raised it 20% over 6 years, we would be exactly where we'd be if we raised that 80% and the 50%, and then still did 3% on top of it for 5 years, correct? We would just, it might take a few more years to get there.
It would be close because the 20% will compound on each other, where if you do them all, like 120 in the this year or next year, and then did nothing, or if you were to do like 3% each year, but you would end up in a similar spot 6 years from now. But no, like, so this is 120, right? 20% over 6 years.
Correct.
But if I do 120 this year and then put in 3% a year after that.
Well, so technically it'd be 100 instead of 120.
Okay. You can see how the 100% in 2026 keeps your cash line from going below zero, because you have to do it all at once, or else if we split it up, you're not gonna be receiving that money right away.
So basically you're saying that we're looking at a deficit if it's not everything that Josh is asking us for a
Pretty
couple
much,
years.
yeah, we spent months with Josh trying to run the numbers and do as low as possible, and we went through, I think, like 7 or 8 different scenarios.
Do you know the exact number for the deficit for the next 4 years if we did 20 for the next 6?
Yep. Let me just do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I go to our cash flow summary, our deficit for 2026 would be $500,000, so 550,000 deficit in 26, 440,000 in 27, 280,000 in 28, 74,000 zero until, what year is this? 2035.
So,
And that's what you can see in this graph.
so a big thing with the rates, and I apologize for missing this part and talking about it, but like I said, where your cash balance is right now is bad. What I looked at was borrowing $288,000 from the general fund, and that greatly minimized this increase. It's taking from the general fund to come to the sewer fund to help have that funds on hand. Otherwise, you would be doing such a large increase just to have money on hand for those projects. So that's one thing that is in there. That helped lower that by about $30 per bill. So that's also on the condition of.
Yeah, I can quickly show you what that would look like. So if I put this back at 100 and then made these threes, this is what the model looks like, and we have to revisit this again once we need to start covering the future, yeah.
Is it possible to get those charts like that with different scenarios
so
emailed to us, please?
You guys approved the water work, so this is something that we have to do with any type of scenario. Anything you guys wanna try, I'll make a scenario for it, and we'll try it, and then we can see how it all goes.
Please.
Weren't we taking 200 from the general fund anyway, before this, for the capital improvements for the sewer lines, what have you found in Sauk?
It was 288 that we had planned.
All the saw grant stuff that we've been doing so far has been out of the sewer fund,
It has been, okay.
which is another part to that, so yeah.
Okay.
So this would be the only time this is coming out of the general fund, it's basically a loan. The sewer fund will pay that back to the general fund once it starts getting some revenue.
Okay. Got it.
Well, I think you've given us a lot to think about. We probably need to meet again on this.
I agree.
Yes, I think so.
This needs to be postponed.
So, what was council's pleasure, doing another session?
Yeah,
I think we're gonna have to.
do another session.
Another session before the next meeting?
Yeah,
May 20th at 5 p.m.
Yeah, when do we have the one for the fire department? Before the meeting comes up? No,
No.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I know that you had to
Thank
present
you,
us with a lot of things that nobody wants to stand up in front of what people and say.
and we are not gonna shoot the messenger, nobody
We
shoot
know
the
you-
messenger.
You deal in facts, we gotta deal with emotions too, so, you know, so we appreciate everything.
your effort.
Thank you.
So, I guess we'll propose May 20th at 5 p.m. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'll make a motion to adjourn the budget study session, and we will schedule the second one at May 20th at 5 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?